Born to a renowned Sicilian family in the city of Syracuse, Dion set himself apart by leading a life of virtue and moderation in accordance with the philosophical teachings of Plato. At the time, Syracuse was under the control of the despotic king Dionysius I. As a result of his competence in state affairs, Dion was entrusted by the king to handle diplomatic relations with Carthage, becoming a wealthy man in the process. In 367 BC, Dionysius I died of poisoning, and his son Dionysius II ascended the throne. Having matured into a man without a proper education due to his father's paranoia, the new king was advised by his courtiers to reject Dion, for they were jealous of his intimate ties to the royal family. At the same time, Dion urged Dionysius into pursuing an education under Plato to become a more virtuous and just ruler. In case this course of action did not yield favorable results, Dion quietly prepared to liberate Syracuse from the young despot. In time, the political rift between the two men increased. When a secret diplomatic message was discovered regarding Dion's involvement with the Carthaginians, Dionysius had him banished from Syracuse in 366 on the grounds of subversion. After landing in Italy, Dion made his way to Athens and lived among the most influential Greeks for several years. Having taken up philosophical matters at the behest of Plato, his time in exile made him more popular and respected to the Greeks than Dionysius was as king. As a result, Dionysius requested that Plato return to Sicily to become his teacher once again. However, the fickle nature of the king betrayed his character. When Plato attempted to discuss the situation of Dion, the king quickly turned against him and imprisoned the philosopher, forcing the Athenians to send an embassy to rescue him. As an added measure of spite, Dionysius sold Dion's estate and married off his wife to one of his friends. When Dion heard of this development, he gathered a force of 800 soldiers and headed for Sicily in 357 BC. Despite encountering a storm that almost destroyed his ships off the African coast, Dion and his men recovered and landed near the city of Minoa. His force quickly marched on Syracuse, gathering support as they went, and stirring the citizens to remove the partisans of Dionysius. Nearly 50 years of despotic rule was coming to an end. For setting free the citizens of Syracuse from despotic rule, Dion was declared supreme general of the city. Upon his return from Italy, Dionysius attempted to recover his kingdom by force, but Dion and his soldiers made a strong defense and forced him into the citadel on the island of Ortigia. In the years following the liberation, Dion faced challenges from both his political enemies and the people. First, Dionysius sent letters to the Syracusans, which were made to turn the public will against their liberators. As a result, the citizens elected Heraclides, a former exile, to become admiral of the navy with equal authority to Dion. Then, Heraclides used his position to undermine Dion and have 25 generals elected to lead the city. At the same time, he persuaded the citizens to regard Dion's policy toward Dionysius as his secret desire to make himself king of Syracuse. Indeed, Dion had been hesitant to have the despot killed outright, and his prolonged strategy of regulating the freedoms of the citizens to prepare them for a new system of governance did little to help his case. Upon the election of the generals, Dion collected his soldiers and headed for the city of Leontini, leaving the Syracusans to their fate. Within the year, Syracuse was nearly lost when the allies of Dionysius overran the defenses and sacked the city. Having come to their senses, the people hastily recalled Dion, and he marched upon Syracuse once again. In 2 days' time, the city was saved from total destruction. According to Plutarch, Dion's decision to spare Heraclides proved to be regretful, as he opposed Dion in all matters, including the establishment of an oligarchy for Syracuse. This animosity led to the death of Heraclides by Dion's men, and his unpopularity reached a critical level. In response to this, his friend Calipus took it upon himself to remove Dion. In 354 BC, while hosting a celebration at his house, Dion was surrounded by hitmen and stabbed to death on the orders of Calipus. He would go on to rule Syracuse for a short time before he too was murdered by his own men. As for the family of Dion, they fell into the hands of Hisitus of Leontini and were subsequently destroyed. The Syracusans would continue to endure despotic rule until around 340 BC, when Timoleon of Corinth finally freed Syracuse and established a new constitution for the city. And now we shall turn our attention to his Roman counterpart. Immortalized in history as the betrayer of his master, Marcus Junius Brutus was a man who gambled his life and his country upon his principles. According to Plutarch, his ancestor was Lucius Junius Brutus, who famously dismantled the Roman kingdom and became the first consul in the newly established republic alongside Publius Valerius in 509 BC. As a young man, he studied philosophy in the Old Academy and was thoroughly trained in oratory. In 58 BC, he began his public service as an assistant to Marcus Cato in Cyprus. This began a series of minor political postings over the next 10 years. When the civil war between Caesar and Pompeius threatened Roman governance, Brutus sided with the latter, despite having been opposed to him politically in years prior. After the defeat of Pompeius at Pharsalus in 48 BC, Caesar had Brutus pardoned and rewarded him with the governorship of Gaul in 46. Having served honorably in this role, Brutus was elevated again to the urban praetorship in 44. But even this honor was not enough to steer him away from temptation. Persuaded by Cassius Longinus and others, Brutus joined in the plot to have Caesar murdered. The burden of the act and the suspicion of those not involved caused a great concern within Brutus, but he chose to remain committed. On the Ides of March, the conspirators rallied around Caesar in the Senate chamber before stabbing the dictator to death, with Brutus himself delivering the final blow. Though he was pressured to have Marcus Antonius killed as well, Brutus believed he would join them in their cause and spared him. But this mistake would cost him, as Antonius rallied the Romans to desire vengeance for Caesar. The further arrival and support of Octavius by the Romans led Brutus to flee to Athens for safety. By January 43 BC, Antonian forces were marching against Brutus, and the two sides fought briefly in Macedonia. As he continued to flourish in his support from both the army and the Senate, Cassius was in Syria building up forces in preparation for battle against Antonius and Octavius, but fortune would soon turn against them. While Brutus and Cassius campaigned in Asia, gathering supplies and support from the eastern cities, Antonius and Octavius joined together with Marcus Lepidus in Rome to form the Second Triumvirate. The proscriptions against Cicero and other prominent Romans marked the beginning of a second civil war. By summer 42 BC, Brutus and Cassius rendezvoused at the city of Sardis before moving west into Macedonia. According to Plutarch, Brutus encountered an evil spirit who warned him about seeing him near the city of Philippi. Additional omens from the birds and the bees upon the plain of Philippi were viewed with suspicion. Any hope for peace between the Romans ended when the First Battle of Philippi commenced on October 3rd, 42 BC. In the engagement, Brutus and the right wing successfully pushed into the camp of Octavius, while Cassius and the left wing were pushed back by Antonius in defeat. With no confirmation of how Brutus had fared in battle, Cassius chose to commit suicide before he could celebrate the success of his companion. Now in sole command of a large army, Brutus made promises of payments and land to his legions to boost their morale. While the land battle was taking place, the naval forces of Brutus and Octavius fought each other in the Ionian Sea, with the ships of Brutus emerging victorious. Unfortunately, the news of the victory did not reach him before the Second Battle of Philippi, 20 days later. On October 23rd, Brutus led his legions against the triumvirs, which resulted in the breaking of his left flank and his quick retreat away into the nearby hills. With his enemies surrounding him and his desire to remain a free man, Brutus thanked his friends for sticking with him before retiring to a secluded spot and ending his life with a sword to the chest. His body was later found and cremated by Antonius, and the ashes were sent to his mother, Servilia. After his death, Antonius and Octavius would continue their power struggle, culminating in a third civil war beginning at Actium in 31 BC. 1 year later, Antonius would die in Egypt, leaving Octavius as the sole inheritor of the newly formed Roman Empire. As for Brutus, his legacy is remembered twofold: for the betrayal of his mentor and for the call to rebellion in the face of tyranny.